And so I think there was a couple of articles that we had this week that sort of bring that point out contentiously. I will say, and I want to start with the one that I find contentious, and
Sure.
that is you pulled out an article from Semafor
Oh
about
yeah.
America's emerging AI leaders, and I'm only partially contentious. So basically, the if I can steal your thunder on, it, then I'll let you cue it up. Is the article basically says Amazon or AI leaders, Amazon, Walmart, and Wells Fargo, and the implication being, hey, there's all these sort of organizations you wouldn't suspect. It wasn't just the IBMs and Amazons and Googles and Microsofts, although they're all on that list. There was a whole bunch of traditional enterprises that were on this list of the S&P 500's top leaders. But I have issues with the sort of methodology, not necessarily with the outcome of what it signifies. But I'll let you take a run at this before I give you my take.
Yes. So Semafor had this interesting article titled America's Emerging AI Leaders, Amazon, Walmart, and Wells Fargo, written by Mizzy Clifton. And it basically looked at the S&P 500 companies and it tracked the patents, the employees, and the publications associated with AI for each company. And and there were some things that were surprising and some things that weren't surprising. As you would expect, Amazon was near the top in all of these areas. IBM, which has always been very focused on publications and research, was very high on this list. Alphabet slash Google was very high on this list. No surprises there. But I think it was a little misleading for this article to say that it was surprised that Walmart, the likes of Walmart and Wells Fargo, were there, because as we know, Walmart spends a whole lot of money on technology. They've been chasing Amazon. They really do care about their analytics and data and cloud computing. They are one of the most advanced companies on earth. And Wells Fargo, as a financial services companies are always they are basically in the business of turning technology into money. That's their entire job. So I think that was a little misleading, but within that, there's some interesting tidbits around companies that you might not expect to be higher up than others. So, for instance, I was surprised when I looked in here and saw that Capital One had more AI patents than, say, Qualcomm or Salesforce or Oracle. Some companies that I would have thought that from a tech perspective would have been ahead. And it just shows the extent to which some of these companies are really investing in their IP for AI.
Yeah, so my issue with this was, well, I have a bunch of them, but one is that there is no weighting, there is no qualification. So
Mm-hmm.
clearly, any company with a lot of employees, if they've somehow, at least I actually went through the actual study and I couldn't find any reference to how they classified what an AI employee
Mm-hmm.
was. So clearly, any company that with a lot of employees, if they somehow label them as AI employees, that's going to put them high on this list. And as you mentioned, if you happen to be an organization that has a big R&D focus, like IBM, then there's obviously a whole bunch of publications and patents related to that. And what is interesting about that is, while we both know that, and we have lots of relationships at IBM and have interacted with them over the years, and I think they're doing some interesting things. We almost never talk about them in the AI context, because what IBM is
Mm-hmm.
pretty bad about is actually taking all that research and operationalizing and bringing it to market in any way that's
Mm-hmm.
meaningful. And so I think it's, there's a lot of issues with this. The part that I do think is interesting, though, right? So as far as within the tech bounds, I sort of ignore this, right? I mean, again, only publicly held companies, only US based companies. I mean, there's just all kinds of things, right? OpenAI, because they're not
Mm-hmm.
public, isn't on this list. I mean, there's none of the major AI players that we were talking about as far as in the startup side are on this list because of that. I mean, there's all kinds of issues that I have with that side of it. But what I do think is interesting and what is salient about it is, as you pointed out, there's some traditional enterprises on this list, like Cognizant and Capital One, or even Adobe, which isn't, they're sort of in the middle ground. They're a tech company, but they're not traditionally considered an AI type player like this. Wells Fargo, B of A, Citi, Qualcomm, Ford Motor, United Health, right? And what it really speaks to is something we have talked a lot about. Um, that and most with and there there are some notable exceptions that actually have some published publications, but most of these are driven by their frankly they're big companies. They put a lot of employees on this, right? And that's mostly
Mhm.
what's driven their ranking here. Um, if you're a major enterprise, you have to be playing this game some way somehow. Now, are they developing technology? In most cases, probably not. At least not a lot. Most of those resources are going to be in the how do they apply that technology? How do they actually use the technology from some of the other players on this list and bring it to value in a way that is competitive in nature, and maybe mixing in some homegrown stuff. And that is something that I've said forever when it comes to the traditional enterprise, is that your goal should be to figure out what parts of your tech stack provide competitive value in some way to the organization and focus your energy there and go buy everything else, right?
Mhm.
And and to me what this the highlight here is that these are also I don't think it should be lost on you that most of these companies are also leaders in their fields, leaders in the industry, and that's why, right? Because they do a good job of that sort of alignment. And so, on the one hand, while I have all these issues with sort of the way they approach this study, for the sake of coming up with a study, I think it did illuminate something that we should not forget, and that is that kind of balance point that you should be striking.
Yeah, skeptically, it also makes me wonder how many of these companies are maybe more focused on AI washing compared to others. Because just on principle, it is hard for me to accept that Oracle would be near the bottom of this list from an AI jobs perspective. Obviously, they do so much with data and predictive analytics and IT operations that require some level of AI that it's hard for me to think that they would have fewer AI employees than practically call it GM or Ford, which I understand smart cars are important, but that important?
Yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And so that's sort of my point. That's sort of what I mean by it. I think that also leads into, let's see, we've got a couple other AI ones that I think as far as bringing in. Uh, which one did I want to talk about? Well, I guess it doesn't matter. We'll pick